Hi, welcome to Elevate Performance Podcast. This week's episode is all around people change results, something I'm quite passionate about, and I've got a guest along today to talk on that topic. So I'll introduce the guest in a moment. My name is Lee Jones. I'm the Sales Director for Elevate Performance, and we're doing a number of these podcasts to cover topics that really mean a lot to us and that we've got stories to tell and are really passionate about. So this week we've got Rich Baylis to join us from Bathrooms by Design. Now, me and Rich have worked together over a number of years on a particular program, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. And that program was one where we really did get the best out of people to deliver commercial results. And that's the crucial thing here, is that you can get commercial results from an organization when you do focus on your people. And we're going to tell a little story about how we did that. So that's introduction from myself. So over to Rich. I'll let Rich introduce himself.
Hi Lee, as you say, I'm Rich Baylis. I'm the Managing Director of Bathrooms by Design, recently appointed.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. As you can probably tell, the bathrooms business, showrooms business, I've been in showrooms for the last 5 or 6 years. And prior to that, worked in various sort of fairly large organizations. Predominantly on the sales and marketing side of things, and then gradually moving into general management, and been responsible for some reasonably large teams of people. I'm as passionate as you are about this subject. I think the people you've got in your organization do genuinely make a massive difference to your customers and a huge difference to your business results. And part of that time, most recently, I spent with Wickes, and that's the piece of work that we did together, as you'll well know.
Yeah.
And some really interesting dynamics and results that we generated through changing the way that we helped our people be more successful in their jobs. And that definitely fed through to a huge improvement in business performance. So very happy to talk about it.
Great. And I suppose one of the first questions I want to ask you, we'll tell everyone in a minute about what we actually did. But when you started in that role and you were the sales director for Kitchens and Bathrooms division of Wickes, what made you want to focus on people? You know, what were the bigger objectives you had to deal with, and where did the focus on people fit in?
I guess probably two things really. Inherently, it's something that I believe in, that people genuinely make a massive difference to your customers. And having previously worked for O2, where we had about 4,500 salespeople selling to the consumer, and we changed the way in which we approach those customers. I was inherently of the belief that if we could change the way that our people operated, we'd have a much better showroom business, our customers would get a much better experience, and our business results would follow. And we had some really challenging dynamics, a business that hadn't really grown for probably 3 or 4 years, but felt like it had huge opportunity. And equally, some of our people were not getting a great experience. So we had about a 50% attrition rate through our new starters, and about an 18-month time for our new starters to just get up to average performer. So joining the business was really tough. And I guess that's probably where we kicked off our piece of work together.
Yeah.
Was to look at how do we help those new Wickes colleagues improve their performance, enjoy their job better, be more successful. And then, as you well know, that then bled into the entire population, because what we thought actually would transfer across all of the population of the sales design consultants.
Mm. So I'd like to tell the sort of listeners a bit of a journey that we went on with the actual program in a minute. But I suppose before we could do that, you had to secure some budget. You had to convince people around you, the board, and people who hold the purse strings of why you were spending that budget. So what sort of journey did you go on to the point where you introduced us to work with you?
Well, bits of it were, relatively straightforward actually. The CEO at the time, a chap called Simon King, very, very people focused person. And consequently, I think the principle of treating people right is pretty inherent in that business. They're good to their people. I think the challenge was more around spending money on sales guys. It's a very strong retail business. Mm. This is an area at the time that was not, I think it would be unfair to say peripheral, but definitely not the core part of the activities of Wickes as a DIY retailer. And consequently, there was a lot to do with the whole population. And it really wasn't just about getting the sales team on board. I think that probably the biggest challenge was about getting the broader team bought into the changes that we wanted to make. As you rightly say, securing budget. Well, actually, early days we just set up as a trial, and that initial trial results managed to convince the business pretty quickly, actually, that the opportunity was there to significantly grow the showroom part of the business. And well, we'll talk more about the results, I'm sure, as the podcast goes on.
Great. So if I'll introduce and just tell everyone a little bit about what we did then, because I think you're absolutely right. It was a pilot, but first of all, you were asking myself, to focus on induction. So wanting to put a sales program into induction, and induction was the focus because your attrition was high, like you say, close to 50% attrition. So, to give people a better onboarding experience, and that's what we were there to do. But when I was in the diagnostic phase and we were looking at the performance of your people, and essentially our methodology takes us to a place of see what people who are doing the right things are doing. And we look to see if we can build those behaviors and mindsets in other people in the organization. And what we did is we recognized some performers, Rich, that you said, these are our top performers. These are our bottom performers. And we took a look at them and said, don't tell us who's who. We put them in a room and, we used our methodology to work out if they were displaying what we would say are the sales behaviors of the now, not mis-selling or old school sales tactics, but people that are giving customers the right solution for them. And essentially what we did is produced a piece of data that said, we think these are your top performers, these are your bottom performers based on the behavior. And I remember Rich, you and a number of your colleagues said, you're absolutely right, and gave us the revenue data that overlaid that says some of those people we recognized as demonstrating good behaviors were doing about £1 million worth of business a year. But what was powerful for us is you had people down doing 200, 300,000 pounds, and not just a few people, but 300 people in that category. And that says to myself, usually there's an opportunity here. So if we can get what those people at the top end of your scale are doing replicated in the other parts of the workforce, then we've got a big opportunity. And I think we predicted at the time a £40 million a year opportunity if you let us do a pilot on one of your regions, not just do your induction, because your induction is obviously only going to fix a certain part of that. So fast forward on a few months, we did a pilot, and London, which was the bottom performing region, was consistently top. And I think that's where the partnership really started, wasn't it, between us, whereby you were able to find a way of trusting us to kind of go into the bigger estate and see what we could do. And I think one other point that I'd say is that when you said about getting wider adoption in the team around you, it's a lot easier to do that when you've almost proven yourself first in one region, because then every other region are saying, can I go next?
Yeah, and that was definitely the case. It was an interesting. We had a slightly reverse psychology, I guess, in terms of the rollout program. And traditionally, I guess these rollout programs, into retailers and some very seasoned regional managers, some really capable people who ran some great shops for a long time. And traditionally, what you do is you kind of go, right, you're next cab off the rank, Lee. So we're coming to your area, and hopefully you're ready for this because it will be really good and you're going to really enjoy it. We kind of reversed the psychology on that and said, who would like to go next? Actually, and if you want to go next, you've got to be ready. And this is what ready looks like. So we worked with you, and clearly we had the content we believe that was going to be really helpful. But actually, getting the buy-in of the divisional and regional leadership was kind of fundamental. So I think the program was interesting in that we initially focused on the induction, then it metamorphosized itself into looking at the full population of design consultants. And then actually, when we reviewed it again, we looked at the store management and leadership. And the reality was yes, you could help improve the design consultant performance, but you really needed the managers on board. You really needed the regional managers on board. So the rollout program, started with the regional leaders. We introduced the program to them and said, right, this is the program. We're going to take you through training initially, take you through changing the way in which we want the customer to experience buying kitchens and bathrooms from Wickes, how we want your colleagues to manage that as store managers, and then how we want your design consultants to change the way in which, not all of them change, but change some of the ways in which they engage their customers and ran the sales customer process. And then, as you intimated, we sort of put it out there and said, right, who wants to go first? And we actually had region managers putting their hands up saying, well, I'd like to go first, and this is why I'm ready to go. Which was a very different way, I think, a very different approach for that business, and probably a fairly different approach to most businesses that I've worked in terms of rolling out programs that we genuinely believed was going to have a positive impact on each of those regions. And guess what? We did have people putting their hands up, and others actually, frankly, were really honest and saying, I don't think I'm ready for this yet. I've still got some work to do in preparation. Yeah. And we were able to then focus our time where we were really going to get the best bang for our buck in rolling out the program.
I love that. I remember specifically, I mean, I remember talking to you guys about these are the things we need to do to move through the program, and quite easy it can be for an organization to go, yeah, here you go, here's our people, crack on, do what you need to do. But when it really gets traction and when you get results that you're proud of is when the leaders in the organization, you can work together with them and role model that. So, the fact that you guys took that on board, you specifically led, that compelling reason to want to get involved, which is basically hold the results up and hold people accountable to say, well, actually, you're going to have to prove some stuff first, have to show that you're managing your performance of your organization was really good. I think also just something to give you guys credit for as well is I think you and your leadership team also changed the narrative as leaders. So rather than talking about performance and results all the time, you started to talk about the inputs, started to talk about the behaviors of good salespeople, not just what's your numbers this week, how have you done, explain yourself. So I think that was something else that you did really well as a team.
That's brilliant. I was thinking before we got together, actually, one of the key aspects for me was exactly what you described there. I guess historically, the leadership team there, particularly the store managers, would not historically have had a sales background. They would very much have been retail background and pretty much DIY retail. And consequently, at times, because they lacked experience and lacked confidence in the area, it tended to be exactly what you described, which was what's your number going to be this week? And you better do it. Why didn't you do last week's number? And what are you going to do about making it up this week? Rather than looking at behaviors, skills, the way in which the customer was being treated, the way in which the sales process was being managed, the management of simple stuff. We used terminology that was very open and I think very easy to interpret. Things like a balanced diet. So a balanced diet being, have you got enough customers at the beginning of the journey? Are you creating enough leads? Have you got enough customers in the middle of the journey? Are you doing great designs? And have you got enough customers at the end of the journey? Each and every week that are going to convert into sales. So you're building the month's business in leads, you're building the week's business in the actual conversion of those sales, and in the middle of that you've got a number of customers going through the journey that are going to feed the next 2 or 3 weeks worth of business. So trying to use untechnical language to make it nice and straightforward for anybody who is good at managing people and good at managing process, which these store managers and region managers are very good at. Making that as accessible to them as possible in what's a sales environment where most of them would have less familiarity. And then with the sales teams, it was really real clear steps in the process, allied to a very clear set of thoughts that you'd want to be going through in each of those steps of the process, the kind of behaviors that are most likely to drive success, the kind of skills that you'd want to apply, but not a script. So that, this is not a robotic, this is, please take these thoughts, take these behaviors, these processes, and apply your personality, because we don't want you to lose your personality just because you're doing things in a slightly different way. And that I think really helped, because you know, in my opinion, if people understand how to do stuff and how they can be more successful, they generally want to do it, but they want to do it in their own way more often than not. And so we guide and steer that a little bit, but predominantly we want you to be yourself, and we want you to be a better version of yourself and a more successful version.
Nice. That's a good summary. I suppose just to fill in the blanks for people then, what we did, obviously we proved that we could make salespeople in the London region top performers. So took London, rose up the table, 13 regions. And it was those results that you're able to shine into the organization and say, who wants a bit of this? Well, what we then did is we then, worked with leaders and managers of regions and business units to know what good looks like. We took the design consultants, who essentially are salespeople, and we took them through a development journey. So they had 2 days of development. And the core part of that program was around showing those design consultants what good looked like. And that was, we had a blueprint, it had behaviors in there, and it had lots of examples of how to bring that behavior to life so that people could practice their own version, and they could see through the use of film and video how some of their colleagues who might be doing £1 million of business a year do it, and so they're able to learn by that. But then the crucial bit was that what we did was develop managers who, like you say, Rich, were core DIY retail managers. These were not sales managers, but we gave them almost a paint by numbers coaching guide to be able to coach what good looked like for a workforce that weren't typically used to managing. And to make that sustain, we put an army of coaches into stores to essentially enable that coaching culture to happen. And, credit to you guys as leaders, pushing that focus on inputs and skills into the workforce meant that essentially we got the change that we were wanting to create. So if we just fast forward then, once we finished the program, we predicted a pretty significant revenue increase. Do you want to just tell us what the results were?
Yeah, so I mean, this program was a huge contribution to a business that pretty much doubled in size over a 4-year period. And I think the initial target of how do we improve induction? Well, we definitely improved induction. We took it from a 50% attrition rate of new starters within a 2-year period down to single-digit attrition. That has a massive impact on both the environment and the way in which people choose the business. And as an employer brand, it has a massive impact as well. So that was really good news. And actually, we took the average time to performing from about 18 months down to 9 months. And the induction program helped because it gave structure. The first month was very structured in terms of the way in which you entered the business, and we tried to set you up for success. But equally, we had a buddy system where you got day-to-day help from colleagues who were really good at the job, and managers who were better at managing you as an individual and helping you through that whole process of change. And you can imagine the impact on the business is massive. So an empty seat costs you a lot of money every month. We had less empty seats. Equally, getting people to performing in half the amount of time has a pretty material impact on the revenue that those individuals and those stores are generating. And we had some great stories around change of behaviour of the leaders. I mean, we had store managers who were almost proud to say that they never stepped foot in the showroom. And I know, 1 or 2 instances where, great people completely changed the way in which they ran their shop. So would spend 80% of their time in the showroom because they realized actually that's where they could have the biggest impact. Still maintained a great retail experience for those customers coming in to buy DIY product, but through really good delegation of skills that they had in abundance to their colleagues on the shop floor, they were able to step back from that day-to-day management of the shop floor and move into the leadership of the sales environment, where their contribution was significantly more beneficial to the business. And just seeing that change was fun. Actually, it was really great to see, and the revenue impact was extraordinary.
And I think we had some amazing success stories of people. I mean, I remember standing in some of the training rooms and people were walking in going, you can't teach me anything. You know, people have been in kitchen and bathroom sales for 20, 30 years. They've worked for all of the competitors. And we had people going out going, you've really opened my eyes to the fact that actually it's not just around my knowledge of kitchens and bathrooms, my knowledge and ability to design, but it's sometimes just in the subtleties of what's been said, or the fact that, you know, maybe I don't use the display units to demo the product, and I don't get people that hands-on experience, or I don't use stories to teach things. And, you know, some of the skills were quite subtle. And we had people walking out, you know, really having to change what they did. But that's only possible when you take managers on the journey. And like you said, those managers got really hands-on, and some of them, you know, really quite scared and skeptical about leading sales teams.
Yeah, and I think alongside that, even some of the top performers, and we had some really talented people, they changed the way they did things. Not necessarily changed everything that they did, but they would change some of the nuances. They used it almost sometimes as a little reminder where it's easy, if you're very good at something, to drop out of some really good habits. You almost start cutting corners. And some of these guys were brilliant at holding themselves to account. So many of the sales team of the top performers were great at improving their own performance. So we definitely saw the whole distribution curve shift to the right in terms of revenue growth and compress. So particularly around the underperforming tail, compressed up to sort of closer to the mean, if you like. So our distribution curve tightened up quite significantly in terms of sales performers. But even some of the top performers that we sort of thought, well, I'm not sure we'll squeeze much more out of them, they were very good at self-teaching and holding themselves to account, and became brilliant role models and mentors for the new starters in the business. And they love doing it. For not everybody, but you know, a large proportion of them, it was a real badge of honor to be a mentor. And consequently, you know, we gave them a bit of mentor training. We made sure that the way in which it was structured that meant that they could continue to do their day job and be really successful. So the onus was on the new starter or any colleague who was trying to get additional help to go join the best performers and watch and learn and ask questions. So we tried not to disrupt their day job, because frankly we wanted them driving out loads of revenue, and equally it seemed a bit unfair to take away their opportunity to earn because they were helping us improve the performance of the overall business. But they definitely took it as a badge of honor, and continued to sort of self-develop, which was great, and a great example for others to watch.
Yeah, we touched on mindsets. I just want to tell one story, because a lot of the program was about dispelling sort of limiting beliefs and changing people's mindsets. I remember there was a mindset, and this is very typical of retail, is that people think that high performance in retail sometimes comes from high footfall or high regional affluence. And I remember one of the metrics that we moved, there was 8 £1 million design consultants in Wickes. And by the end of the program, we had 63. And one of those was in probably what you would consider to be one of the lowest affluent areas of the country. So their average order value for a kitchen was about £5,000 compared to, I can't remember what the exact average was for the estate, but it was a lot higher. And what that showed was that it wasn't necessarily about having, you know, people come in buying £60,000 kitchens. It was people that probably find it harder to part with their money. And it wasn't about selling a kitchen. It was about selling people the dream and having that perfect kind of space in their house that you would be proud to have, and you'd be proud to have people around for dinner, and whatever the situation was, or whatever place your kitchen has within your family, it was about the ability to unlock that for customers. And so one of the results was the increase in the amount of £1 million design consultants. Average order value was up. Installation attachment rates were up. So I think you won an award for being for having one of the highest attachment rates for installation in Europe at the time. And then top line result that I think we're all really proud of is the £63 million increase in revenue over 18 months. So we predicted 40 million. Actually, you know, pro rata is about right. And that's a pretty big result to get out the development of people. I think we're all pretty proud of.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly the ROI on that's pretty spectacular, given the investment we made, and of course there's a time investment as well in the program. But even if you counted all of that into the additional cost, I mean, it was many multiples of tens of improvement. So it was a financially a really good program for us to do. I think as you sort of suggested, the almost the only or the biggest consistency around where did you need to be a brilliant salesperson? Did you need to be in an affluent area? Did you need to be in a new showroom? Did you need to be in a big shop with high footfall? Well, the absolute consistent thing was the best performers were entirely inconsistent in terms of their geography. They could be pretty much in any store at any time with any colleagues. Clearly, the ones with better managers tended to do a little bit better. Yes, if you had a brand new showroom and we were driving loads of footfall, what tended to happen actually was more design consultants would do better. The best people, you could pretty much put them in any shop in the estate, in any showroom you wanted to, with any catchment area, they would still deliver you £1 million. Once as we took them through the program, what we had was more and more people who were confident and capable of delivering that kind of number. And you can imagine the impact on the business is really, really positive across the piece, because not only did we have more than £1 million design consultants, actually we increased the average design consultant performance by 50% over a 3-year period in total.
Yeah, and I think
which is massive, because the cost base doesn't follow the revenue base, which is really handy.
And you did that. I think, you actually moved some of your design consultants around to almost help to spread that new mindset and that skill. I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you think of any of the particular stories of success from individuals? I mean, I can remember we used to try and get people on camera to share their stories. That was one way in which we helped spread the change around the UK estate. Can you think of any particular people that really just, adopted to the change, and what was their success story?
Yeah, and actually interesting, some of these were people who'd been design consultants for many, many years. And I think, as you described earlier, were people where they believed that we really couldn't teach them anything new. They'd probably been in MFI for 20 years. They'd then joined perhaps another retailer. They'd then joined Wickes. They were very capable individuals from the point of view of knowledge of product. What they came out, I think, of, even out of the initial training program, was a big change in their way of thinking. And that had probably the most profound and material impact. And to see these, I think it was fair to say, in some instances, quite cynical and stuck in their ways, people changing the way in which they engage their customers, and getting great results on the back of it. I mean, really good to see them and have them come up during conferences, or even at we used to have £1 million dinner where anyone who made £1 million, and it was an open club. So if you made $1 million, we were slightly nervous about how big this was going to get. But if you made $1 million, you came to this big shindig at the end of the year. But some faces there that I never imagined I would see in that environment coming in, and we're definitely noticeably different in, slightly more humble, slightly more self-conscious, self-aware of their behavior and the impact on their behavior, and really singing the virtues of a different way of selling to customers. Not losing all the sharp edge they had. It's not about blunting the ability to sell to customers. It's about helping customers get what they want, and then helping them realize that dream. And of course that costs money. I don't think anyone ever comes into a shop expecting to get a kitchen for free. So they expect to spend money, but how do we get them to the point where they know what they're going to buy? They know they're going to get what they've always dreamed of for their kitchen or their bathroom, and actually helping them get to that space rather than feeling pushed over the line. It makes a material difference to how the customer feels, and interestingly, how the salespeople felt as well.
Yeah, that's a nice problem to have. worrying about how big your event's going to get every year for your dinner. But I remember I came down to Croydon, I think, and I came and filmed you for a bit of a case study and a celebrating of success. And I met a store manager there that said, I thought I knew all the answers and I thought I knew it all. And he said, and the biggest thing that's changed for me is my mindset that I don't know the answers and that I learn every day. He said, so now what I've learned is I find out all the high performers in our business and I keep asking them what they're doing. And he says, and my new mindset is that I do that regularly. He said, and so that's been a massive shift for me, is that you've opened my eyes that collectively we are more powerful rather than I try to compete with people around me. I can compete, but also collaborate with them. And, you know, this particular person had driven a huge amount of revenue increase in their store. So nice story for me, for him to say that and open up his honesty. So Rich, I suppose probably good to draw to a close. Thank you for sharing your side of the story. It's a program I'm massively proud of. Myself and the team from Wickes stood on stage and we took 7 awards for the program. So I'll always be able to show those to my mum and have them on my LinkedIn account. So I'm proud of that myself. I'm quite passionate at the moment that, especially in retail and high value retail, that people can make a massive difference to commercial results, and that organizations can take accountability for their results through the development of their people. I know this is obviously something you're passionate about as well. For anybody that's in the space at the moment or trying to drive commercial results in their organization, is there any kind of lasting kind of points of view or advice you would give to any sales leader, any service leader that has that challenge right now?
Wow, that's quite an interesting challenge. I think it's really interesting. I'm the new business I'm in now. We've got some really talented people, and looking at them only in the first couple of months in the business in Bathrooms by Design, looking at these individuals, they're all really different. They're all really different people. They have some differences in their styles, but inherently there's a lot of commonality in what they do to make themselves successful. And I do believe that, you know, across your population, depending on how big it is, many of the skills are there. It's drawing them out. How do you identify them? How do you identify the skills, the behaviors, in order to help distill those into something that can be learnt and can be copied and can be applied across the whole population. It doesn't mean you'll have all the answers, because you may well need to look more broadly across the industry or across other industries to pick up new information in order to develop your capability. But the odds are somewhere in your business, there will be there will be a number of people who will be the key to unlocking better performance. And I think the ability to draw that out will make a material difference. And that's part of what I'm excited about doing, I guess, over the next year or so, where I am now.
Cool. Well, we look forward to hearing how you get on within your new organisation, because obviously you've seen it done before, so you know it can be done. And I think I couldn't concur more. So I think the art is about how you tap into the skills of those people and how you recognise what are the differentiators to performance. And I think organisations that can separate themselves from the rest are ones that spend the time and investment to work that stuff out. So, Rich, thank you for spending some time talking to us about it. I'm passionate about that story. I know you are. So if anybody does want to get in touch and speak to myself or you, then I'm sure, they can do that, and we'll be happy to talk more about it. But so I just want to draw it to a close, Rich. So thank you very much for your time. I wish you all the best of success in doing the same again in Bathrooms by Design. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you. Take care.